And kind of sticking with that same topic, President Trump's tariff threats appear to have gotten Mexico to act and help to solve the crisis that we are seeing at our southern border. But there are Democrats who are still criticizing the president's tactics. But isn't there proof that the threat of tariffs could be an effective tool in negotiating foreign policy? However, some say it's inappropriate, but it could be effective nonetheless. Here now to discuss this is GDP Advisors and co-founder Seth Denson. We appreciate your time, Seth. Thanks for coming on this morning. The complaint, I think, from Democrats is that the president's taking credit for a deal that kind of had already been made with Mexico. But even if there were some of these things that Mexico said they were already doing, the tariffs should force the implementation, right, and force them to act.
Well, listen, I think the proof is in the pudding. The argument that the Democrats are making here, I can get the football to the goal line, but until I cross the goal line, I don't get the points. The president got the points. I mean, we're seeing Mexico start to act on these things as a result of these tariffs, and them sending troops to the border and stopping the flow of immigration up north, I think, is a win for the administration.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, it's one thing to say it, and Mexico says a lot of things, but for them to actually enforce it, if they do, will be a big difference. Let's take a look at what's in this deal, what has been agreed to here. I would argue the biggest one is Mexico deploying 6,000 troops, when I think they had only had around 500 prior to this. 6,000 troops to their much smaller southern border with Guatemala to try and enforce and stop these migrant flows where they start. Also, the migrants, a lot more of them will be able to wait in Mexico as they wait for their asylum claims to process in the United States, a process which can take a year or two. They're going to offer a lot of these migrants jobs and education in Mexico, and they're going to take some action against these vicious human trafficking groups that are doing these horrible things. But when we look at, I guess, the impact to the American economy of this deal and of, I guess, the greater issue of the president using these tariffs as a threat, a lot of Democrats say that this is why our numbers are moving in the wrong direction. We just had a weaker than expected jobs report in May. Do you think the tariffs are a good move to use these as leverage?
Well, specific to the tariffs with Mexico, you're talking about a 5% tariff. Nobody wants tariffs. At the end of the day, the middle class, the lower middle class, they're the ones who are pinched the most by tariffs. But this was an effective strategy, and in the end, it wasn't implemented. There was no tariff implemented. So I think that the president is operating from a position of strength because of the booming economy. We may have had a weaker than expected jobs report, but overall, for the first 2.5 years of his presidency, the president has delivered on jobs and on the economy.
Here's the Vice President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Listen to this.
The weaponization of terrorists, the increase of threats on our economy, on our farmers, our manufacturers, our consumers, is going to hurt our country. It also creates uncertainty, Joe, with our trading partners.
And here is the president's response.
I just want to say to the United States Chamber of Commerce, if we didn't have tariffs, we wouldn't have made a deal with Mexico. Without tariffs, we would be captive to every country.
So, Seth, he fights a lot of conservatives that don't like the way he's doing things. Who's right here?
Well, listen, I think that the president is doing what he feels is necessary. Nobody's in favor of tariffs. Let's be real. I don't believe that the president is in favor of utilizing tariffs and actually implementing them. But they are a strong tactic to use when trying to get these foreign governments to move in a direction that would be favorable to the United States.
Yeah, they certainly are. And you start to wonder, how else do you make some of these other countries do what you need them to do? You need some kind of leverage. And a problem we've had that's been ignored for 40 years in this country, which is immigration. Let's move on to a second topic here. We're talking about California, and their new plan just got through the legislature is to pay for a certain amount of illegal immigrant health care. And you see here, it's going to cover people ages 19 to 25. These aren't people that generally need a lot of health care, but this is $100 million a year almost. It's going to cover about 90,000 illegal immigrants in a state that has a real problem with homelessness and a lot of other issues. What do you think of this plan?
Well, listen, my heart goes out to anybody that needs access to health care, right? But in the state of California, you have hundreds of thousands legal U.S. citizens without quality access to care. The infrastructure needs a lot of work, and that $100 million would go a long way, I think, to help improve the current situation throughout California, but specifically in inner cities where access to health care and quality health care is limited.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting idea. Do you think there's going to be backlash on this? I mean, from conservatives in California? I mean, 1/3 of the people in that state are conservative. You're giving away health care to illegal immigrants.
Sure, but the problem is the legislature is strongly Democratic, and obviously Governor Newsom controls the pen. So while there might be backlash, it sounds like this is going to go through and become part of the overall budgetary structure, and we'll just see how it's implemented going forward.
I imagine it'll sail right through as well. Seth, thank you so much. Jillian, over to you.